welcome to Call Out So Cute. If this is your first time here, thank you for being here. My name is Willurai. I am today doing some educational work around stalking. I'm an advocate. I am a intersectional feminist, disability rights advocate, as well as an activist in multiple forms. I'm also a survivor of multiple stalkers, multiple situations of stalking over a very long period of time. So I hope these videos are beneficial and educational, both for survivors and families of and loved ones of victims of stalking, especially those ones who no longer have those people here with them. But also that this can broaden the conversations and understanding and take away the kind of the hidden, the unspoken, untold stories around stalking. I know that I can say without a shadow of a doubt that there is an epidemic of stalking going on right now, particularly stalking that is initiated via cyber means. And if you look at my shorts today, you can see I've covered the 7 to 8 specific listed types of stalkers. Go check that out if you haven't seen those shorts yet. I'm seeing them just as kind of starting points, and like I said before, I don't think that this list is perfect by any means. I think that there needs to be a lot more study done, a lot more education, a lot more funding, and a lot more support for survivors and victims of stalking, particularly in so-called Australia. A lot of the resources that I'm finding are actually from America. They seem to have done the most amount of writing about stalking. And in so-called Australia, there's really not enough support. There's really not enough, there's not enough open conversation or community, or community-led support and action around stalking. And I think that one of the reasons, my personal belief, is because that there is this kind of fixation that is being taught and spread throughout society at the moment that is about obsession and jokes around stalking, like stalk book, for example. The idea is just casually calling Facebook stalk book. Or people going, oh yeah, I've been stalking your Instagram page, as a joke. And as an actual survivor, as somebody who almost died due to a stalker, I'm finding more and more that casual watering down of, and the what's the word? The normalization of stalking is something that I personally am dedicating a lot of my next year to stopping and to talking about openly. If you yourself are a survivor of stalking and you want to get in touch with me, you can email me at calloutsarcuteaf@gmail.com, all one word. And yeah, I'm not a professional. I'm not a trained psychologist, but I am a survivor and I have a hell of a lot of lived experience, both in the past and currently. And the more I survive in this world, the more that I see a need for open conversations around hard topics such as stalking. And in this kind of world of celebrity and gossip magazines and tabloids, and now social media, quote unquote social media, I see it really like just totally twisting people's entitlement to other people, particularly women, particularly AFAB people. AFAB means assigned female at birth, if you don't know. And it often comes with a sexualization and an exotification that is on such a deep psychological level that so many people that are engaging in stalking, even just to a small amount, there's a whole lot of what's being called gang stalking going on, which is when it's like a group of people create like almost like a frenzy around obsessing over a certain person, a certain figure, a certain event that's taken place in their community, in their social group, in their family, whatever. And yeah, I really hope that this has been beneficial, and I'm going to be talking about lots of different sorts of activism on this channel, but I'm going to continue to advocate for the rights of survivors of stalking. I'm going to continue to tell my stories, my lived experience, and empower myself by doing so. And I'm finding it incredibly empowering. I'm finding it incredibly freeing to be able to be talking about this after almost 2 decades of my life have been dramatically affected by stalkers and their entitlement to me purely because of what they've decided about who I am, what they're projecting onto me about who they want me to be, who they think I am, or their relationship, their engagement with me, however big or small it's been throughout my life. And this is really centered around and connected to my last name. So I was looking at a website called Psych Central. It seems to be an American website that puts out a lot of resources, quizzes, questionnaires, and different articles about healing. I'm also a healer, which is part of my work as well. So I decided I might just read some of this because I thought it was also useful to read. So this is from Marshall University's Women's Center, and this is the characteristics of the stalker. The characteristics of the stalker can fall into 5 categories. So my the short series of shorts I did today is more listing the definitions of the types of stalkers, which I might actually briefly read out. So they've listed 7 different types, but I made a video which also mentioned the additional 8th type of stalker that is a number of people are trying to get listed, and something that I have experience with. Although, like I said, there's been multiple ones. So I'll just briefly read the 7 types of stalkers. 1, the rejected stalker. 2, predatory stalker. 3, incompetent suitor or slash incompetent stalker. 4, the resentful stalker. 5, the intimacy seeking stalker. 6, the political stalker. And 7, hitman or professional stalker. And then the 8th stalker that I made a short about is the pretending to be a caregiver stalker. So there's not an actual official word for it at the moment, but somebody who, like it says. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to Psych Central and read Marshall University's Women's Center characteristics of the stalker, that it can fall into 5 categories. One, relationship. Hold on. Excuse. You'll see me continuously doing self-soothing, self-calming techniques as I'm doing this work, as I have CPTSD. My original CPTSD actually came from medical abuse and medical neglect, which of course is actually something which many of my stalkers have taken advantage of. And I've been recently trying to think about and doing a lot of shadow work to work out if there's like a new layer of CPTSD, or if it's more that all of the stalkers have kind of intercepted with my CPTSD that's specifically medical. And that's also another reason that I thought it was important to talk about the caregiver stalker. So again, the characteristics. Relationship. These stalkers tend to stalk previous partners and or desire a relationship with the person. In some cases, the stalker in this situation may desire a relationship with an acquaintance. Individuals who fit the stalker description and has had negative relationships in the past often meet criteria for a personality disorder, such as narcissistic personality disorder. A lot of that's going on right now, obviously, with this is me interjecting. Yeah, I think that is really being propelled a lot by social media and the likes, the shares, the instant validation, the lust for notoriety, and the idea of being like an influencer or whatever, which to me is just like ridiculous. Like, influence yourself, like be your own influencer. Back to the description. As well as antisocial personality disorder or being a sociopath, or dependent personality disorder. I don't know a lot about that, but I'm guessing it's like somebody who, spiritually I'd talk about it being like an energy vampire, somebody who wants to like latch on to your identity and latch on to another person in a way that's non-consensual. Next point in the 5 categories of characteristics of the stalker, as listed by Marshall University's Women's Center. Obsessed. This type of individual constantly thinks about the person they idolize. They might create a mental, and again, I'll just point out that it can be like a love-hate thing. It can be somebody who really idolizes somebody, but has like a love-hate feeling towards them. I just have to plug in my phone. Excuse the noise. Messy artist. Okay, there we go. This type of individual constantly thinks about the person they idolize. They might create a mental life involving the person and have a hard time imagining life without the person. You may have heard of the term, here it is again, erotomania, which describes a delusion in which the person believes that someone, usually of a apparently higher social status, such as a celebrity, a powerful person, etc., is in love with him or her or they. it is likely that someone suffering from schizophrenia may fall prey to the erotomanic delusion. I'm not going to comment on any of that right now. Next point, rejected. Many stalkers have a history of challenging relationships and difficult communication with others. Some stalkers, especially if female, may meet criteria for borderline personality disorder. A point I'm going to make here is that personality disorders are constantly being, that even that term is actually being seen as being problematic within the psychology and mental health industry. So that's something that's being looked at. And, you know, just that there's lots of problems around mental health being diagnosed, and the definitions, the Western definitions that the Western medical system has decided. And also that everybody, no matter how sick they are or in what way they're sick, deserves proper support and proper health care. Okay, back to the description. Some stalkers, especially a female, might meet criteria for borderline personality disorder, in which rejection is often very difficult to cope with. This does not, however, describe all individuals with borderline personality disorder. However, it is likely that some individuals with this diagnosis could become a stalker due to a history of stormy relationships, roller coaster emotions, and unstable love affairs. I'll just mention there that I think that there's a common, I think that it is known that a lot of love affairs or third-party relationships, secret relationships, infidelity, that it can end up in one of the people stalking the other person or becoming obsessed with them. And my thoughts and feelings about that is, again, about the idea of having like a taboo fantasy or desire or part of yourself that you have not confronted, that you have not harmonized with. And that's part of the work that I'm trying to do, is to, you know, open up and broaden the conversations around stalking and around the treatment of marginalized people, activists, people who are in positions of challenging the status quo. Intelligent. Marshall University claims that stalkers are intelligent and carefully plan their stalking behavior. I feel like intelligent is a broad term to use, but calculated is definitely something that I've seen in all of the stalkers that I've survived, that I know of. Because again, as I said, there's an epidemic of gang stalking going on in the world at the moment. Yeah, back to the quote. Someone who falls into this category could meet the criteria for sociopath. Sociopaths are adept at planning their attack and controlling others with charm or acting with glib. I don't really know what glib means, but I get the vibe because it's very, from my experience, from my lived experience, and a lot of the survivors of stalking that I have personally spoken to and offered, you know, emotional support, exchange emotional support with, that, yeah, there's this common thread of the stalker going out of their way to fool witnesses to the stalkers, bystanders, which is a whole nother video, and and even loved ones of the survivor, the victim of their stalking, to create a completely different image of what's going on, and to rewrite a completely different story, to project a certain relationship or a certain entitlement to the victim of their stalking, that the victim either is not aware of, doesn't agree with, or is actively trying to explain to people is not true. And that's when we get into the really dangerous realm, particularly for women, non-binary people, AFAB people, of gaslighting and of not believing survivors, not believing victims. And when this becomes even worse is when you're a marginalized person, such as a Black woman. Black women do not get believed nearly half as much, and not even a quarter as much as white women. I'm really bothered by this angle, but whatever. So this is like, again, a whole nother subject matter I could open up, but the stalker sees the discrimination that their victim goes through as an opportunity to take advantage, to get in, to manipulate the situation by using the witnesses, the bystanders, and even the loved ones or the associates or the people who know the victim / survivor, as I like to say, using and leaning into discrimination that victim already lives with is just one of the most repulsive, harmful, problematic, and bigoted elements of stalking from my lived experience, because they know that automatically that's going to be putting their victim in a disempowered position, technically, in the situation. Not that I allow anyone to take my power away, but there needs to be more research done into the differences between Black women getting stalked and white women getting stalked, between Black men or Black gender non-conforming people being stalked, and people who are not. This also needs to happen specifically for disabled people, and disabled people, just like people of color and First Nations people, have our autonomy taken away from us all the time from the beginning. So that makes us puts a huge target on our back, on our identities, because stalkers can see that as an opportunity and manipulate that situation. And the fifth characteristic of the stalker that's listed by Marshall University's Women's Center is motivated. Most stalkers believe that their object of desire or obsession, their object of focus, is the only person they could ever love, and tend to be motivated to pursue based on this type of thinking. There are also common personality characteristics of the stalker that are important to understand. These include narcissistic behaviors, selfishness, history of domestic violence, inability to cope with rejection, obsessive, controlling, and compulsive, impulsivity, suffering from delusions or a severe mental illness that interferes with perception of reality. Perception of reality, that is such a major, major point to any time you think about or look at a case of stalking. And again, I just want to reiterate that everybody deserves healthcare. Everyone deserves mental health support, as well as I won't go into that. Just trying to stay focused. Number 8, jealousy. Bing, bing, bing. I could spend an hour talking about tall poppy syndrome right now. And jealousy, particularly when the stalker is actually in a victim mindset, which I know is confusing because they're the predator, they're the stalker, but they in their own mind rewrite this kind of story that they are the victim of something, that in some way the victim, the actual victim, the person they're stalking, can either fix, change, or is responsible for, so deserves to be punished or deserves to experience the wrath of their lived experience. And very, very rarely is the victim / survivor of stalking fully aware of the intensity and the amount that the stalker is pushing onto them and projecting onto them, and how much they have convinced themselves that their suffering in their life, their misfortunes, the ways they're not privileged, the ways that they are struggling to deal with their privilege, which obviously, again, as a Black disabled First Nations woman and activist, a whole nother chapter. So yeah, jealousy. And then you get this really other creepy problematic thing which is happening so much, and it's happened to me a lot, where people on some weird subconscious level, and again I think it's because of the tabloid culture, Western culture, and the idea of fame, this idea that like, oh yeah, you want to be famous, then that's what you have to deal with. Oh yeah, your mum's famous, so you just have to deal with that. Which is so dehumanizing, and it is such a violation of human rights. Nowhere does anybody say, oh, I want to be an actor or a singer or, a famous blogger or whatever. Nowhere does that person go, oh, I'm going to do this and I really hope I get a stalker. I really hope that I get somebody who like obsesses over me unhealthily, because that'll obviously that means I'm really amazing. No, that is not how it works. And so there needs to be a hell of a lot more conversations around what that is. And I'm doing a lot of work to try and explore that and understand it myself. But the idea of people being jealous of someone having a stalker, which is just so whack, and they see it as just a form of attention. And that's part of this evils of social media, which I have spent some time trying to work against in my own work. You may be familiar with it, I'm not sure. That the social media kind of literally creates this illusion that getting attention from complete strangers is a good thing, and that it somehow validates you as a human being, which I really fundamentally do not believe in. And there's also this other thing that happens where people get jealous of your partner. Like, just say there's somebody who wants to be with you, or they have been with you and they fucked up their chance or whatever. They get really jealous of your partner or the people in your life getting to have time with you and getting to spend time with you, whether that's time that they feel like they've lost out from the past, from reality, or whether that's imaginary time that they're creating in their own mind. I will take a minute as well to talk about the fact that my recent pack of stalkers have been attempting to bully me about my disabilities. And the one that's the most obvious, visible for people who, need things to be obvious is me being an amputee. Yes, 9 fingers. Lucky me. That happened from being stalked. And so there's this other like fascination, and that's something that happens with amputees, with sometimes people that have like a huge scar, people that have like weird pigmentation, or quote unquote weird different pigmentation in their skin. Some people can get fascinated with the idea of you being different. And as a disabled person and as a disability rights advocate, that is inherently ableist and inherently dehumanizing and problematic and objectifying. And that's the worst thing about, one of the worst things about being stalked, is this feeling of you not having your autonomy, which is what they try and make you think, right? This is the they try and break down, water, just slowly weigh you down to the idea of not having boundaries, that you don't have a right to have boundaries, that you don't have a right to say, I don't want communication from you, I don't want your attention, I don't want your focus, keep my name out your mouth. These really basic boundaries that human beings used to be able to set up, and it was like a normal social thing to do, is to say, I don't want to communicate with you, I don't want you in my life, please stay out of my life. Apparently, due to the internet, that is something that people don't know how to do. A lot of people don't know how to do. And I really think that there is just going to be I think there's generations of mental health issues that are going to come from this. And yeah, jealousy is just such a sad, awful part of human nature, and it's something I've never had. I haven't had the same problem with jealousy in terms of feeling jealous of other people, because I really do value every single person and see. I love people being unique, and I know from a lot of my work around decolonization that tall poppy syndrome is literally a tool of the invader that is generated to have the colonized, the oppressed, fighting amongst each other. And I think that this is a huge problem, particularly in the LGBTQIA plus community, which I'm also a member of. Well, I am, but I do have these moments where, and I'm looking at it this year, where I am really considering just totally denouncing those labels, because of the amount of internalized misogyny, the amount of sexism, the amount of abuse, and the amount of queers just desperate for approval, and just the amount of LGBTQIA plus people who are literally like those circus performers jumping through hoops to get the approval of cis het community. Cis meaning the gender, you feeling aligned with the gender of the body you were born into, and het as in heterosexual straight community. Number 9, manipulative behavior. Yes. And hey, now you can even do it with edits, right? And it's particularly manipulative if you are using the identity of somebody, like I said before, particularly if it's an identity that gets discriminated against. So if you say some racist shit about a black person, there's going to be some other racist bigot person that's going to jump onto that and give you approval and go, yes, you're amazing, yes, racism. It's also manipulative to use somebody's gender against them. So you'll find a lot of the terminology, the insults, the words, the name calling that a stalker will use towards their victim, about their victim, because usually blah, blah, blah. They'll be really heavily gendered. And that often will also reflect and depict the true, often really sexual desire and nature of what's going on. And I feel also like manipulative behavior just, it covers all of the 8 different types of stalkers, and is particularly more complex when it's somebody who you know, or somebody who you have known, or somebody who knows you. And if it's a stranger and you happen to be a famous person or have a famous family or be famous in your own right because you've done a hell of a lot of work in whatever field you work in, to then use that person's position in society, in community, for example, a marginalized community like the rainbow community, to then use that position to try and get, again, more validation and try and really climb some kind of, like, basically try and use that person as a ladder to increase your social status. That's a manipulative behavior that really creeps me out. It creeps me out so much because I also really believe every person is important. And so if you want to be famous and you want to be well known, how sad to have to do that on somebody else's name, Actually, the closest I get to, and that's another thing, is the manipulation of empaths. Manipulation of good people who, not that I think there's such definition as a good person and a bad person, but people who, often it's people who are caring and giving and do charity work, community work, activism. And so, manipulating the victim or the survivor's actual emotions of empathy and pity, that's really where I've been fucked over. Like, that's really where and I really feel so strong and empowered to know that so clearly now, and to see that so clearly, that it was often my empathy, that I would feel empathy for the position of the person, and I wouldn't want to hurt their feelings. I wouldn't want to shame them or embarrass them. And I actually also find it very awkward, like, just genuinely, I find it very uncomfortable and awkward, because it's like being put on this pedestal that you really don't want to be on. And it's one that you're not there by choice. And then if you have a whole bunch of other people who are like jealous of you or whatever, and perceive you as being on some pedestal already, then they don't want to help you, and they actually get jealous of the fucking gross pedestal that the stalkers put you on. Number 10, sexually manipulative behaviors. I probably find that a little bit triggering to talk about completely, but I will say that my current stalker has made a website, an official website about me and my family, where they literally state, I don't want to make, and then my name and my partner's name come. So literally publicly talking about sexual assault, and because there's a whole bunch of people that are angry at politicians, they're allowing and condoning that and even supporting that. Shame upon they. So as I said, as a survivor of DV and SA, I am not going to go in talking too much about that, but I can say that it can become a repeating occurrence for survivors of SA and DA. Because the predatorial nature of a stalker can see that wounding, because they've already wounded other people like that, or they've imagined it, or they. If you're enjoying this video, then you can take a minute to like, share, or subscribe. This is Call Outs Are Cute. I'm Willurai KB, and I hope this is beneficial. Number 11, deceptiveness. Lying. Often there is actually like compulsive lying going on. Again, coming back to creating a false story to sell to other people to try and hide, mask, or make an excuse and validate the stalking behavior, the obsession, the fixation. And yeah, deceptiveness as well, in terms of like, there's been multiple times where you get to a point, speaking from my experience and the survivors of stalking that I've spoken to, where the survivor or the victim will try and confront their stalker and will try and ask them, do you have a crush on me? Do you, was that you who left that thing on my front porch? When you try and confront that person, just complete gaslighting. And there's a lot of problems with getting these people help, because stalkers don't see themselves as stalkers. They do everything to convince themselves that they're not stalking, or that the stalking that they're doing is different because of their special relationship with you, or their special relationship to the topic or the subject matter, or their passionate conviction about something to do with your life, something in your life. 12, socially awkward, uncomfortable, or isolated. This is particularly really problematic with social media and everybody just being on their phones all the time, everyone communicating via their phones, everybody voyeuristically watching each other via social media. That just already is generating the kind of, that's something that like peeping Toms will watch you through your window. A stalker will go to a certain location they know you're at just so they can watch you, this voyeurism. So there needs to be more, this voyeurism bullshit has to stop. Excuse me. I get dyspepsia as part of my conditions, my many sicknesses that I have been advocating for at least 18 or 19 years. And cancer is something that creates a very particular emotional response from people, and that emotional response can actually become a weapon in the hands of a stalker. So yeah, being isolated, I think that's really important to think about, because it also means that there's no one around the stalker to say, hey, are you sure what you're doing is okay? And sometimes what will happen is that isolated, awkward, or uncomfortable person will actually find somebody else who is also isolated, who's also uncomfortable, also socially awkward. And then they will lean into that toxic, low vibration, it almost becomes like a drug. It becomes like people get addicted to kind of tapping into your energy and the idea of having some kind of power. So it's definitely a lot of people who don't feel like they don't have power in their general life. People who feel like they don't have power within their own identity, within their own relationships, with their own family, with their own mother or father or parent or caregiver. Sometimes even with their own culture, like as a predominant, well-known Aboriginal family, First Nations family, I have experienced people wanting to sort out their own cultural bullshit via latching on and attaching to my relationship with my culture, and my position within my tribe within Aboriginal community. 13, has a history of falling in love instantly. No comment there. Number 14, depends on others for a sense of self-worth. I mean, that's a whole video, and that's also something that very much leans into my spiritual work, the healing work that I do as a healer, an energy worker, as a tarot reader. But there's so much lack of self-worth and self-love and self-care going on. It actually breaks my heart. Again, the empathy thing, which is part of the way they tapped in. And it is always like there is something within that person missing, and they think that you can fix it. They think you can fill that gap. They think that you are the answer to that longing or that hurt or that trauma, what they're carrying with them, that is making them not love themselves and think that they're worthy of a real relationship or a real friendship or a real conversation with me or a real love and a real new start and a new beginning. It's actually really sad. It's so sad. It's really fucking sad. Number 15, low self-esteem. Ties into everything I just spoke about. And number 16, temperamental. And that's part of what's the scariest, is that you never know what your stalker's going to do, and you never know where they're going to be. And then if you happen to be famous or well known, then there's this thing of like gang stalking, of encouraging other people to stalk you. And that's something that has been, through the pandemic, the thing that's just made me go, you know what, no more. Like, it's been the final straw that has made me decide to be very vocal about what's happening to me and my family and my mother. And we've had 3 stalkers that have been obsessed with the family stuff. And one of which was also obsessed with me romantically, but was obsessed with the idea of, culturally, the idea of owning and controlling somebody with my last name, and somebody who is connected to the family I'm connected to, which is, again, very dehumanizing. Like, I'm my own person. And so yeah, and then of course with mental health issues, with anger problems, and this like desperate ways to get your attention. Like, that's like, you just never know what they're going to do to get your attention. And so then you get stuck in this awful symbiotic, non-consensual symbiotic relationship situation where a lot of victims and survivors of stalking are told not to give that person attention, not to acknowledge it, not to speak about it, which can end up in them being in a lot more danger. And I don't personally believe that's the right thing. Everybody, obviously, and particularly if you are a survivor or a victim of stalking, please use your own guidance. Please check in with yourself, talk to a professional you trust, as well as a loved one. But I personally have found that there is safety in letting it be known what's happening, because because if something happens, then they go, oh, there we go. It is important to keep in mind that stalkers are not always individuals who are suffering from mental health or personality disorders, but that the possibility is very high. Most stalkers fit the criteria of sociopaths and narcissists. They are charmers. They have a way with words, although their words are often shallow and insincere. Yes. And they sometimes have a sex appeal or attractiveness that blinds their victims to their true intent. The difficulty lies in trying to determine if someone is a stalker, and if so, what type of stalker they are. As always, stay informed. So this is a longer video than I thought it would be. And, you know, being disabled, I just kind of do my work when I can. Which is another thing, like, my stalkers really don't like how what a independent, strong-willed, disabled person I am, and that I don't really give a fuck about what people think about my disabilities. I've survived things that make me feel so lucky and blessed and happy to be here and be alive, which is also this kind of energy that a lot of people find challenging about me. Is they assume that, you know, my life is perfect, that I'm driving around in limos, sipping champagne and eating lobsters with my family, when the reality is I've had a horrific life that has been absolutely brutal, including near-death experiences that have made me who I am. And yeah, if you are a survivor or a victim of stalking, I want you to know you are not alone. I want you to know that your lived experience is very important. I want you to know that nobody has a right to be in your life who you don't want to be in, you don't want to have them in your life. Nobody has entitlement to you. Nobody has a right to cross over your boundaries time and time again, especially if you have already made it clear that you do not want that to continue happening. And nobody deserves to be stalked, no matter who you are, no matter how famous you are, no matter how beautiful you are, how hot you are, no matter what you wear. And I think this is something that I often use as a metaphor to talk about stalking, which is, you know, when it comes to the R word that rhymes with grape, there's this horrible, disgusting, problematic, misogynist idea that a woman wearing revealing clothing, or a person wearing revealing clothing, or even being naked, that they are inviting or asking, quote unquote, asking for it. And so the idea that a famous person, or a person who advocates, a person who creates content, a person who stands on any kind of stage, that they are asking to be stalked, is absolutely fucking wrong. And you should never feel like you have to play down who you are in order to not be stalked. Yeah, well, this has been a big emotional video, and yeah, like I said, if this has been beneficial, or you have found any of this video to be helpful, educational, or you just want to support the work I'm doing, then please take a minute to subscribe. It costs you nothing. If you know anybody who's experienced this stuff and you think this video will be beneficial, please forward it to them. And yeah, let's demystify stalking. And part of the reason I'm doing this work is so that I can continue being an activist without any kind of fear of being constantly watched. And that feeling of being constantly watched is something that, you know, drives prisoners insane. And makes survivors of assault, of DV, of any kind of controlling, abusive situation. The idea and the feeling of like constantly being monitored by somebody who you don't want that attention from is incredibly harmful and destabilizing and distracting and traumatic. And it can generate a lot of fear. So in some ways, I'm thankful that I went through the things that I went through, the near-death experiences and the horrendous things that I went through prior to my first stalking. I feel like those things have actually been empowering and given me strength to not fall into a loop of fear, because that's when the stalker knows that they've got you. You know, that's when they really kind of stick out their barbs and really like try and latch on, is when they think that you are in a state of fear, that you'll be easier to manipulate, you'll be easier to control, to access, to isolate, which is a big thing that stalkers do. So I'm Willurai KB, a activist, artist, healer, musician, content creator, as they say, an advocate, and a human being in my own right, and a survivor. Lots of love from Call Outs Are Cute.